All right, welcome back to the WikidataCon. Oops, sorry, my webcam was not on. Apologies. So, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the WikidataCon. This is the last part of our day 1.5, and I have the honor of introducing Denny Vrandečić, co-founder of Wikidata, founder of Wikifunctions. You know him, of course. So there's a little point for me to actually explain to you who is he. So I give him the floor to present the new project that has been launched last July, which is called Wikifunctions.
Thank you, Luca, for the introduction. Thank you all for being here. I'm very happy to for you to having me for the program committee to accept the presentation. Wikifunctions, fulfilling one of Wikidata's missing promises. I will explain what the title means, but first I want to introduce Wikifunctions a little bit. Wikifunctions is the first new Wikimedia project since 2012, and a certain other project has started that we are celebrating here today. Actually, the birthday is coming up, like, I think tomorrow, right? Today, I'm not exactly sure what the definition is. Wikifunctions is just like Wikidata, fully multilingual in terms of natural languages, but also it aims to become fully multilingual in terms of programming languages. We'll see that also in a bit. And it's a wiki for functions. What does it mean? What is a function? So let's take a look at Wikifunctions. Actually, I don't have to talk about Wikifunctions in complete hypotheticals anymore. I can actually go to the website and show it. So this is the main page of Wikifunctions as it currently is, or similar to it. And what you see here, there are quite a few functions that are being pointed to. There's a bit of intro text and so on. And let's take a look at how one function could look like. I'm taking intentionally a very simple example in order to make it understandable. This is the not function. Not or negation takes a Boolean value. Boolean means that it's either true or false, and that's it. It's the only two possible values it can have. So it can take either true or false, and when you run the function, you should get the other value. So basically, if you run it on true, you should get false. If you run it on false, you should get true. That's how negation works. Now, if you look at the negation function and how it is done, so we see that we have two tests, unsurprisingly, because we have two possible values. True negated is false, and false negated is true. Thanks, Nicola, for the links. This is really awesome. And then we have three different implementations for the not function. We have one implementation in JavaScript, one in Python, and one in composition. We'll go through all three of them. Let's take a look. So in Python, it's just saying not. So return not of the value that you got in, and that's it. So we have a bit of code which is being actually run, and this is how the negation function in Python looks like. In JavaScript, it looks pretty, it's very similar. We have also a little bit of code here. We have an exclamation mark instead of the not keyword, because this is how JavaScript implements it. But that's basically it. Now, composition. Composition is not a brand new programming languages or whatever that you haven't heard about. It's actually just means that we're composing existing functions together in that are already there in Wikifunctions. And in this case, it is the if function. The if function has three parameters: a condition, a then in case the condition is true, and an else in case the condition is false. And the condition is simply the value to be negated, the value that the one argument of the negation function. So if what is being given in is true, then return false. If otherwise, return true. So this is the thing. This is how it's implemented. As I said, I was going intentionally for a very simple example. Now the thing is, in composition though, everything is built out of objects that we have in Wikifunctions. And just like in Wikidata, all of these actually have IDs. We don't have QIDs, we have ZIDs here. But they are just, IDs with labels, just like in Wikidata. And this means that we can, just like in Wikidata 2, just switch over the view of this page from English, for example, to Polish. and have everything there being in Polish. And just like in Wikidata, it's not just for viewing the whole thing, it's also for editing. So you can actually edit functions in your native language. You can contribute functions in native. You don't have to speak English in order to start coding. And this might be for many people the first time that they can create code in the native language. So with Wiki functions, we want to allow implementations of functions in English. We aim to bring functions to a whole wider pool of people, to a large pool of potential contributors who have all the skills necessary to contribute functions but don't speak English yet. We hope to unlock the potential. We hope to grow a new community. We hope to bring in new contributors by supporting a new form of knowledge. And we really want for Wiki functions to democratize access to functions. Today, programmers have easy access to all kinds of functions, but others only to whatever some big tech companies allow them to have. Wiki functions, we want to democratize the usage and also the creation of functions to enable many more questions to be answered. So this was a very simple function, as you have seen. And the nice thing about Wiki function is, so what we aim to do is to actually integrate Wikidata into Wiki functions. What does that mean? We want to be able to use the knowledge that is in Wikidata to answer functions. And here's the following is a mock-up. Here's how this could look like, for example. So we could have a function that asks, did they live at the same time? And it takes 2 taxa. And just to take an example, I'm taking my 2 favorite dinosaurs. I guess if you have kids or nieces and nephews, you probably have a favorite dinosaur. So mine are Stegosaurus and T-Rex. And you can ask basically, did Stegosaurus and T-Rex live at the same time? And here we get into a little bit of trouble, because in Wikidata, things are not always modeled in a consistent way, right? So we can take a look at Stegosaurus, and Stegosaurus has actually a start time and an end time, 155 million years start time, end time 150 million years BC. Okay, that's good. But what about T-Rex? Well, T-Rex doesn't have a start or an end time. It doesn't actually have anything about time. What it does have is that it says that it's a parent taxon, that it has a parent taxon, which is a Tyrannosaurus. And Tyrannosaurus, in turn, has a temporal range end and a temporal range start, which is the Maastrichtian. And the Maastrichtian, and in turn, has a start time and an end time. So we can actually conclude that they have lived between 72 million and 60 million years ago. And we can answer the question that we see that, for example, that T-Rex and Stegosaurus did not live at the same time, not even close. In fact, humans and T-Rexes are quite a bit closer than Stegosaurus and T-Rex are to each other. And we can get this information out of Wikidata, but it's a bit difficult because the modeling isn't really consistent between all of these. So we could then ask a function to Wiki functions, and once we can then link to Stegosaurus and T-Rex, it could try to look up all these different possibilities how it's modeled. Or, and this is now the interesting thing, where in the Wiki functions and Wikidata would start to interact with, it is kind of a forcing function for Wikidata to become more consistent, just like Sparkle queries already are today, and any other use of Wikidata is already today, trying to make the modeling more consistent. But we can also make the function more complex in trying to account for different modelings. And this is where the 2 communities will have to work together in order to figure out which way they actually want to do. So there will be a lot of considerations around how to use Wikidata, how the modeling can be maybe done more consistent, how those things can be working better together. And there's a lot of stuff we can discuss about this. So, but how is Wiki functions then going to be used besides answering questions on the website? So one thing that we are aiming for is that already today in Wikipedia and other Wikimedia projects, you have a lot of functions being used. So for example, if I go to the page of Audrey Tang Fan, who's part of the government of Taiwan, there we see that it states age 42, and this 42 is in fact calculated by a function which is currently implemented through a module in the English Wikipedia. And we have many of those modules across all the different projects. We have about 800 projects, and we have this module implemented about 80 times or something like this. And most of them are just actually copy and pasted from each other at a specific time in play, at a specific point in time, and they're not being kept up to date. So if there are fixes in one, they're not necessarily being carried over to the other languages, and so on. So we have a lot of different versions of the age module and names of that. And they're also named differently. They have maybe different parameters. So you can't actually just copy and paste them from one wiki to the other, because you might actually have a different name or even have a different functionality. And one of the goals of wiki functions is really also to centralize this a bit more. So just like Wikidata centralize the site links, I guess some of you might be old enough to remember the fact that the site links were not used to be centralized. Just like Wikidata used to centralize the site links, wiki functions aims to centralize some of these functionalities that modules provide, that templates provide, and make it accessible to all of the MediaWiki projects at the same time, and in a way that is actually easily copyable and copy-pastable from one wiki to the other. So instead of having all these 80 different modules and templates, we would just have one function which is internationalized and which can just be called from any of the wikis, and which would display then result in the wiki, in the given wiki. So this is how we want to use data from Wikidata, maybe images and data files from comments and wiki functions, and make it available in all of the Wikimedia projects. To have a pipeline where we can create and take data and create text with high confidence, with high fidelity for the different Wikimedia projects that we have, so that everyone can share in those. So, what does this have to do with any promises from Wikidata? The hook in the talk. What are we here talking about? So, about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, roughly, when we wrote a technical proposal for Wikidata, the proposal was separated into 3 different phases. The first phase was to unify the interwiki links, the site links. As I said back before Wikidata, all of the different Wikipedia articles pointed to all of the other language editions of Wikipedia that had an article about a specific topic. So if you had an article about Taipei in the English Wikipedia, it would probably point to about 100 different language editions of Wikipedia and saying, this is the Taipei article in the German Wikipedia, this is the Taipei article in the French Wikipedia, this in the Chinese Wikipedia, this in the Hindu Wikipedia, etc., etc. And then in the Hindi Wikipedia, again, you would have basically the same list. You would say, this is the one in the English Wikipedia, the German Wikipedia, and so on and so on. So you would have this list of 100 Wikipedia articles, slightly different because you don't have the one Wikipedia where you're on, in all of these being copy and paste. And a lot of this was done by bots and kept up. In many Wikipedias, actually, the bots were responsible for about 80 to 90% of all edits on those wikis because the site links were not centralized. So the first phase of Wikidata back then was to bring the interwiki links into a single place, Wikidata, and then have the articles call them. The second was to support the info boxes, which then turned into statements, and the statements could be used in the info boxes. And we are still definitely in the phase of implementing that, as you know. In a growing number of Wikipedias and other Wikimedia projects, we have a growing number of fields which are being used to fill the info boxes. And Wikidata has since grown well beyond what is needed in the info boxes and has much more data about all kinds of things, and is used in many other things. But the original proposal didn't actually stop here. It also had a third phase, phase 3. And whenever I bring it up to Lydia, she winces. So phase 3, we called back then lists. And the idea with lists was that you can have a query and display the query result inside of a Wikipedia article. So this is something basically that data was actually fulfilled in many ways with, for example, with Sparkle. So in Sparkle, you can ask a lot of queries and you get beautiful visualizations of those. The part that is missing is that those query results actually not being integrated into Wikipedia. What you see here is a query for mathematicians and their theorems, and display them by dev date of the mathematician, which I stumbled upon recently, and I find just one of the most beautiful queries that we have here, really. Here another one. This shows you the etymology of the word water, and other words that were coming from the same Proto-Indo-European root down here, and show you. This is a query over the lexemes that we have in Wikidata, and displaying you the connections between those. Here, this map is created out of a query, so no coding or anything. It's just a query asking for glaciers in Central Europe, and you get a nice visualization on a map. And again, something that you could totally use inside of an article in Wikipedia, but you can't. Here, the list of capitals of the world by size of the population, and listed backwards, so the smallest first. Again, this is a query that you can just ask to Wikidata. It gets updated whenever you get new data, and the result, there is a Wikipedia article for that, but it's not built on top of this query. There is completely independent of this result. We have Listeria by Magnus Manske, which is kind of a bot that takes Wikidata queries and puts them into a MediaWiki, and you kind of have this kind of thing there, but it's not as tightly integrated into the infrastructure as you would want to have it in order to make this actually a viable path to push the data back and forth. But it's a really great step to show what can be done with those things. And this is now the thing with wiki functions. So if wiki functions can take data from Wikidata, and the results from wiki functions can be integrated into the Wikipedia and other Wikimedia projects, you basically have this path of creating whole query results inside for Wikimedia article. So, and this kind of fulfills the promise of creating lists of or any other way that you actually want to use the knowledge from Wikidata and generate some content or some piece of content that you can then reuse in the different Wikimedia projects like WikiVoyage and Wikipedia. And yeah, and this brings us together, and this also really then ties the data together, because the data that is not being used has the ability, likely will start falling into being bad, not being maintained, and be more liability than advantage. So using more and more of the data is really the goal here, in order to improve the quality of Wikidata, to improve the value of Wikidata, and at the same time also by having those functions, the functions will kind of force a kind of modeling, otherwise the queries won't work, onto the data, and we will have a give and take between writing simple functions or writing more complicated functions, or having more uniform modeling on the other side, or having more different ways to model. So this is something that the two communities have to talk with each other. So the first thing that we want to work on is, that we already started working on, is we have already some functions for morphology. So for example, here is for the Finnish nominative plural, you enter here the I guess infinitive version, the lemma, and then you can get the Finnish nominative plural of a noun here. And this is the same data that we already see in Wikidata, represented with different forms. So we here again have the same form, and we also have the same data in Wiktionary, often in several different Wiktionaries. that have all of the same thing. And we really need to figure out, well, how do these three places should work together? And the function for the regular forms, then we have Wikidata with all the data being in a structured form. We have the dictionaries displaying the data, often currently, most of the time actually, containing the data. That's something where the communities have really to get together in order to talk about how to make this a streamline and how to make this the most useful way. One way I would love to see this, for example, use is with Lukas Werkmeister's awesome data lexeme forms that is basically giving you a form in order to enter lexicographical data, to create the lexeme or to edit the lexeme. And here, for example, we'd connect this is probably this one here, the nominative plural, directly with the function that we have just seen. And for example, once you enter the lemma, it could just automatically generate the other versions, and you can then just check them instead of having to write them all hand by hand. Another way you can use this is, for example, as I've shown previously, we could use the functions that we have and check them against the current forms and see if they are actually consistent. Which would be the case for all the regular forms. For regular forms, obviously, it wouldn't be. So not okay would not here necessarily mean that it's a mistake. It can just be an irregular form, which happen quite frequently in many languages. So there are many different ways we can use the functions and wiki functions for morphology and similar. And how these things are separated is the big question that we will have to work on in the next coming year. Another place I would really like wiki functions to be used rather sooner than later, even though I'm not exactly sure how, is for descriptions, because a lot of the descriptions could be just abstract descriptions being created and then be available in all the, I think it's 500 something languages that are being currently available for descriptions. And really a lot of information is, as you know, very redundant and doesn't need to be written so often. So it could be just here an abstract representation. It says something like university in Nigeria or something else, and be available in all the languages that we have then a function for to create those things. How we actually integrate those things? That's a great question. Where do we store the descriptions? Do we materialize them for all the versions? Do we just put them on out of the fly? I don't know. That's something we have to figure out together. And finally, then to bring this together into the Wikipedias, to have the age function, to have more complicated things like the list of national capitals population be created by a function, be up to date with Wikidata, have more consistency across our projects and bring everything together. How this all fits in with the MediaWiki architecture, which isn't really meant for this kind of things, that's something we have, again, to figure out. I know I'm bringing a lot of questions here. And how do we get to acceptance of functional results as content? Esteria didn't have the greatest success in the English Wikipedia, as we know. And why there's the functional difference to what we're working with is not that great. So the question is, how do we make it actually acceptable to have functional results being content in the Wikipedias? Again, a question we have to go on. So we discussed about this. I'm pretty much at the end of the question, which is so good because I'm probably over to my time already. So we want to take wiki functions and continue building on it, and then integrate Wikidata into wiki functions, which will be a huge step forward in order to make use of all the knowledge in Wikidata, and then have the results of wiki functions, function calls, be available in the different Wikimedia projects so that we can all work together on much more knowledge than we have currently available. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here. And join us at wikifunctions.org. The website is open, and we are working on making it more and more available and open. Thanks, everyone. We have time for a few questions, I think.
Yes, we do. And there are already three questions and a comment. But if you have more questions, please write them in the chat or raise your hand, as I told you, with the emoji. So straight to the questions. User Ahmad Alvarez asked, will it be just one repository for wiki functions as it happens with Commons or Wikidata?
Yes, there will be only one wiki functions.
Oh.
That was a short one. We don't plan this.
Okay, so wise woman raised their hand. I would like to wait a bit on a question, if it's possible, because there are other that came before, but I will get back to you as soon as I'm done. So user Melderick asked, could wiki functions be used to define constraints in Wikidata?
It depends what you mean. So what we can do is, for example, you would be able to create a function that checks an item and tells you, well, this is okay, or no, this is actually problems and stuff like this. So you could create a function that does that. You could create a website or a workflow that uses those functions then in order to display, for example, all the following things have problems. Whether we would integrate it tightly in Wikidata, for example, that those results are available whenever someone edits Wikidata, that's a question for very far down the line, because we need to figure out, like, should we be calling wiki functions on the fly while someone is editing, and how do we display this? Might be starting with a gadget or something like this. I can imagine that we can do that, calling the functions over there and checking what is there and so on. But there's a lot of questions like of practicability and how exactly we implement it. In theory, this could be a path to that. In practice, we already have the entity schemas, which are doing a great job and which are getting more and more workflows for these things. Functions would be potentially more powerful, but a little bit more difficult to understand and work on. It's always a kind of balance where exactly we want to work. I would always suggest to use the simplest possible tool for your task, and if entity schemas can do it, it's probably better than writing a function to support that, and only use functions for those places where it doesn't work, and then we need to figure out how actually we integrate those things. So that's a very qualified probably.
Thank you very much. So next one from Rory O'Donnell. I hope I pronounced it right. So the comment is, really like the idea that Sparkle and Wiki functions are forcing function to improve data consistency. It's a nice way to think about it. But the question is, next step would be function pipelines and integrations.
I'm sorry, I need a little bit more. Next step would be function pipelines and integration.
Would be working on function pipelines and integrations.
So our next steps are to work on integration between Wikidata and Wiki functions to be able to access data from Wikidata in Wiki functions, and then to integrate the Wiki functions results into the Wikipedia and other projects. That's the questions. And yet the pipelines on how to exactly do this and where caching happens, when the things get updated, how do we recognize that something in Wikidata has changed? This will be a big part of that, which will be happening behind the scenes, and hopefully just magically work the way we expect it. But yes, this is definitely the next steps we're working on. I hope I answered the right question.
So now it's time for a wise woman to, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Denny. Again, it's a brilliant thing you have that I don't understand at the beginning, but it's beginning to make sense. I think it's a great idea for replacing things like the module for age or something like that. But to have it generate content, my problem would be that the databases that you're using for generating these lists, the lists are wonderful. And I use Wikidata a lot for getting lists of potential things that I want to be looking at. But there's so much missing still in Wikidata. And I would be a little bit leery of Wiki functions generating lists like this, and people thinking that this is the true and one and only list. And as you've shown very nicely with your dinosaur example, that's a brilliant example. It's kind of hard to sort this kind of thing out. So I would want you to have some sort of a caveat at some point to say, well, this is not the one and only list. This is just a little bit of the list. Or how do you see this developing? Do you think Wikidata will at some point be no longer biased?
Wikidata will always be biased, just like every representation of knowledge necessarily has to be. But what I would see here is that if an editor starts putting content that is generated through a function call into a Wikimedia project like Wikipedia, they would actually check the result at that point, and then they would hopefully notice that there's something missing and so on. So I'm just as if someone creates, if someone, for example, starts replacing the list of states, of US states in some place and the capitals or whatever, I would very much expect them to take a look whether this list is actually complete. Are there 50 of them? Are they any repeated and so on? And
Yeah,
if
but
they don't do it, I expect other contributors to pass by and say, wait, this is wrong, and start actually either fixing the data or telling or just reverting the thing and say, come back when it's complete. So the nice thing that we have is we have all these communities working together. So even if an individual person is maybe a little bit less careful, we have the community as a whole to do the editing work and see, no, look, this is not complete. We have to either to write this manually because we can't make it complete in Wikidata, or we have to go and first clean up in Wikidata before we can actually do this here and replace it.
I'm not as optimistic as you, because I see so many people believing everything ChatGPT says and not bothering to check it. So, and especially if we have less and less editors working, like we have the problem in the Wikipedia right now, that might cause a problem in the future, that we don't actually have that community anymore. We rely on functions.
Here the hope is also, so it's true that a lot of people seem to believe a lot of things that ChatGPT says, but it rarely makes it into Wikipedia. It doesn't stay unchecked there, I hope. I don't hope that there's too much content being just taken as from a ChatGPT result and then not being carefully edited out or being checked for correctness, just like with any other contribution, right? Regarding the number of contributors, in fact, Wikifunctions is a little bit of a remedy in this direction, because right now in every in every language edition, the contributors are more or less within their language community. And with Wikifunctions, the idea is that those functions can actually be available to all of the language editions at the same time. So we would then grow from, let's say, about, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 contributors on the Croatian Wikipedia to potentially 2,000 contributors across all Wikipedias working together on a specific function. So even without growing our contributor base, we have more people working together on the same content, basically. So I hope that this will kind of counteract this this very realistic fear that you are describing.
Okay, we are already over time, but there are two more questions that I would like you to ask to answer. One is, right now, a lot of Wikidata functionality is from user Peter. Right now, a lot of Wikidata functionality is done with bots. That's a problem. Can Wikifunctions take the place of bots?
Partially, maybe. So Wikifunctions themselves won't do anything. You will always have to go through some process of saying, okay, I'm calling now this function, and then I'm doing something with the result, like storing it somewhere or whatever. So it won't replace it in many cases, what bots are doing. In some cases, part of the work that bots are doing can be replaced. Less so for Wikidata, actually, more so for the Wikipedias. My hope, for example, is that something like LSJbot can indeed be replaced mostly with Wikifunctions, and therefore putting it back into the hand of the communities to control the content that they have. Instead of having materialized texts in millions of articles that are only editable if you have access to this bot, it would be part of the infrastructure and anyone can click on edit and change pieces of that. So something like LSJbot, I hope, can be replaced. So a lot of the other bots, not necessarily. It really depends on the actual bot that we're talking about.
Okay, so last question, which is probably a pretty straightforward answer anyway. When will Wikifunctions be callable from other Wikimedia projects?
I have a very clear, I don't know for that yet. We're having major discussions because part of our infrastructure isn't really good for that, about resourcing this part of the project and so on. I can't answer this question. I don't know. I would love to be able to point to the community and say, look, there are a lot of people asking for that. Can we please resource this sooner? So if anyone wants to organize something like this, I'd be super thankful, and it would be very, very helpful for me to get this thing done sooner. Currently, I can't give you not even an estimate. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Denny, for your presentation and for your answers. Thank you very much for the participation to you all. Thank you very much. Sorry to Rory O'Donnell for butchering her name. I'm so sorry. I apologize for that. This ends this part of the session. So we will reconvene in 10 minutes because there is the last panel of this day, which is from Mahir. And see you in 10 minutes.